I hope everybody has had a lovely Christmas. Now, I know I said we'd be releasing a new episode today regarding an unresolved murder from Glasgow in 1985. However, I've been struck down with my annual obligatory month-long illness, throat infections, chest infections and asthma problems. So I've not been able to do any work or research. So instead, today's episode is one that I recorded on the UK True Crime Podcast with Adam back in October, along with Paul from the True Crime Enthusiast podcast and Naomi from the Real podcast. It's just a roundtable episode we recorded back in October. You might have already heard it on Adam's show, but I thought I'd play it here as well. I hope everybody has a lovely new year when it comes around, and we'll be back in February with new episodes.
Hello and welcome to the True Crime Podcasters Roundtable for October. My name's Adam. I'm the host of the UK True Crime Podcast. I'm joined by my usual co-host, Paul, from the True Crime Enthusiast. Hello, Paul.
Hello, all. I'm Adam. Dawn, Naomi. Nice to see you all.
And we've got two fantastic guests this month. Really excited to meet them both. Firstly, Dawn, the host of Scottish Murders. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, Adam. Hi, Paul. Hi, Naomi.
Hi, Dawn. Okay.
And of course, you know Naomi because you did a special together a while ago, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. We did a good one. It's Luke Mitchell and Jodie Jones, wasn't it, Naomi? Following your... Yeah.
The North and South collided on
And talking of which, from God's own county, Essex, Naomi, welcome.
Hi, hello.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us this evening. So, the format today, we're going to last for about an hour. Thank you, everyone, for joining us live. Really appreciate your time this evening. Let's start off with a subject that we've all brought to the table tonight. Should we let's go to Naomi first. Naomi, what would you like to talk about first?
So something that has come about probably in the last year, I've noticed more, is that the safeguarding of my own listeners. So in my day job, I work as a TV producer, and we're very, very regulated by Ofcom and by other charities where if we have a contributor on the show, for example, so I've produced some true crime content and some other reality shows that maybe you've watched or haven't watched. We won't talk about those. But we have a real duty of care to the people that we have on our shows. And as well as that, we also have a duty of care to the public. So obviously Ofcom regulates us very strictly in TV. In podcasting, I know we've got a moral and ethics code that some of us follow and some don't. But I have noticed that I have had a real influx of listeners who contact me on social media, and they really open up and they'll share experiences, and it's usually off the back of an episode. So say, for example, if I've done one on stalking, a case of stalking, then it's usually a guarantee that I will get some listeners come and say, God, that was really hard to listen to because I was a victim of stalking. Or maybe it was, if there was domestic violence involved in a case, they might say, oh goodness, that really brought it home for me. I was a victim, I escaped. And I've really noticed recently how important it is to sort of safeguard the listeners. And I know that we all put warnings, on our episodes and trigger warnings, etc. But I wondered what everyone else does, because I have so far made. I will talk to every single person that messages and give them. They've given time to listen to our episodes, so I want to give them time back. But it's also knowing when you can leave a sympathetic ear. But there have been a few times where people have disclosed really serious situations that I wouldn't be equipped to professionally help with. So, I try and then signpost them to an organisation. And I just wondered if that was something that happens across the board. And if so, how do you handle that?
Oh, that's a really good question, isn't it? Paul, what do you think?
Well, yeah, so for that, Naomi, I think I've been approached in the past by family members of victims of cases that I've discussed, and one specifically that I covered a couple of years ago, the case of Duffy and Mulcahy, the railway killers. All right, so infamous case. Not only was I approached by a member of one of the victims' families who complimented on the telling of it, but somebody also got in touch as well. It's I believe it's someone we met, Adam, at our live show. I won't name any names or anything, but who claimed that his sister had been a victim of possibly Mulcahy as well. And he was quite shocked from hearing the tale, and he wondered what I could do about it. And I was at a bit of a loss. And the only thing I said to him was, totally honest, I said, the only thing you can do is go to your local police, report this. It's doubtful that anything would get done because of the length of time about it. I don't think she was sexually assaulted or anything like that. I think nearly was. From the sounds of the description, it was Mulcahy. But that's the best. And sometimes you do feel a bit helpless like that, because it sounds a bit of a bit of a brush off of just go and tell the police. But what else do you do? There is no other facility in place to deal with something like this, is there? And yeah, so it does happen, and that's all I can do really, is just be honest and speak to someone as though a friend of mine had come and said that to me while we're having a pint or something like that. But yeah, so I think what that brought home to me was that the tales that we cover, how far they do reach, they might unlock something in someone. They ring home to a lot of people, and if that brings things to the fore that they might have buried for a long time, and it helps them to be ready to deal with them, then how does that not spur you on to just keep doing what you do? Yes, completely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard, isn't it? And some of the content that we cover is obviously extremely dark and disturbing, and potentially, they haven't confronted it maybe, and that's happened a few times as well. So sometimes you might be the first person that they disclose something to, and that's really tough, really tough.
It's a really good point, Naomi. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Dawn. No, you carry on, please.
No, I was just going to say it's a good point. It was brought to my attention at the podcast show back in May that what Naomi's brought up about having to support people that come on your show, especially because they're, if it's family members or somebody involved in that case, it can be affecting them. So that was brought to my attention. It was something I hadn't thought of before. It's just something I didn't think of. So if I do have people on my podcast that's to do with that case, then I will signpost them to, if they want to speak further about it to somebody else, because obviously I'm not qualified. But that's another, I didn't think of, I don't have anybody messaging me personally about stories, but that's actually, nice that you brought that up. There's something to prepare myself for. So something I can.
That depends on the story, though, Dawn. That depends on the story, doesn't it? The next story that you put out might resonate with someone so much that they think, thank you so much for bringing that to the air, And I think if anybody gets in touch with any of us to do with stuff like that, it's a testament to our research and storytelling. I really do. What privilege to be kind of in that position.
And that's one of the things about podcasting, and I find it as well with the podcasts that I listen to, and I listen to a lot, is that I feel very much like the people I'm listening to, I feel like I know them because it's a very intimate form of communication, right?
Absolutely. We're right in the ear, aren't we? And actually, I've listened to all of yours, and you've all got such a lovely tone and delivery, which I think is so key, isn't it? Which you don't always get. And I think especially people in Britain as well, when they hear a British voice, sometimes when they hear American voices, they can perhaps feel, they really feel the distance, or if they hear an Australian voice, they'll feel the distance. But when it's right on your doorstep and you feel you could sound like someone's neighbour, then it is, you're right.
I think you've got to have a passion for it, though, haven't you? Yeah. You have to have a passion. If your passion for it isn't displayed in how you come across, why would anybody bother getting in touch with you? So I have the same thing with like some shows that advertise themselves as true crime and comedy. Now, personally, anybody who advertises themselves as comedy is about as funny as being bank frauded, I think, straight away. But I find it quite obscene that the two things are molded into one. Like it's not a funny subject. It's the most devastating subject to at least someone.
Yeah.
So, how do you make a mockery of that?
So that was my
Try
question.
to.
That was actually my question, Paul, and I wanted to see, well, it's nice to know your thoughts now, but I was going to ask what your opinions were on true crime podcasts that actually do have humour in them, because when I first started out, I did it with my sister initially, and it was never a comedy podcast, but it was never joking about the victims, it was always respectful, but she would inject a little bit of humour and we would have a laugh, not about the victim, but about situations and stuff like that. And a lot of people seem to like that kind of thing. It didn't sit well with me. So when she said she didn't want to do the podcast anymore, obviously I was heartbroken, but yay at the same time, because I got to do what sat well with me, which is, I know there's no jokes, there's no humour, but people did say that they enjoyed that side of it. And obviously there are podcasts out there that are humorous as well. So what are your thoughts? Is there a way to do it that's not disrespectful? Because a lot of comedians, they have got podcasts and they do true crime. Does that work? Should it just be comedians or should it not be at all? What's your thoughts?
Oh, come on, Naomi. What do you think?
I just think they are two genres that should just never mix. Because it's, that is... So we're all somebody's child, we're all somebody's friend. If some of us have children, the thought of them, there is a popular podcast now, I'll never name names, there's a popular one where there are some really inappropriate things, and I've read their reviews and people are picking up on it now. There's some really tasteless jokes and also just at really bad times. They're halfway through describing something that is utterly horrific, and then something will come in and then they'll be laughed at, and it feels so jarring to hear that, because you just, if you're an empathetic person, which actually I think so many true crime listeners are, I think we have a lot of sympathy. And I know that every time I've done an episode where there's been a call to action, so if I've had someone's loved one on and there's a petition, for example, or there's a GoFundMe or something, my listeners have really got behind it, and I've seen that empathy play out and that sympathy. And to think that somebody would make light of that. It's also, I remember there was one victim's sister, and I said, thank you so much for letting me sort of cover the story. I said, has anyone else ever approached you? And someone else had, but it was someone who did their makeup whilst telling the story. And there is obviously an audience for it because the viewing figures are incredibly high, and it's not to go in at any person, because actually most of the time, the respect is there and the tone and delivery, like I say, is okay. But the thought of putting on mascara while I'm talking about somebody being tortured, or the police doing something wrong and the family have been in this horrible limbo for a long time, it just doesn't add up for me. So,
well, I think, Paul, I really feel strong about this. I think we should name names. I mean, Mike at Murder Mile doing his makeup while telling stories, it's well out of order, isn't it? He needs to get a life, doesn't he?
What I'm always most amazed with Mike when he's doing that is how he manages to put mascara on and tell a story while he's doing that. Because I've never in my life met a woman who doesn't need to do that when they're putting mascara on. So, Mike, you're a pioneer. He's probably not. He's not listening now or watching, Adam. Is he? He's off makeup shopping or whatever.
And what about you, Paul? Come on, I mean, I've spent nights with you. That sounds wrong, doesn't it? I've spent time in the bars with you, and you're a funny guy, same as Mike, right? What's your view on comedy and podcasts and true crime podcasts?
How am I funny? What the fuck is so funny about me?
Yeah.
No, seriously. That was me trying to be all good fellas there, that was, and failed miserably. The only thing me and Joe Pesci has is we're about the same size, but I think humour in shows, I mean, over the years I've had a lot of people, and one of the logos of my show I have t-shirts with on is a shamble of bollocks, which I happen to sort of say one day, but I speak on my show as I would do if I wasn't recording. So I'll say things like, If I'm talking about someone, if I've discussed like a criminal who's been really stupid, I'll say almost to myself, said, your mum must have been a weightlifter to raise a fucking dumbbell like you. And people just latch onto that. They love it, and there are all sorts of things. I think something else I said many years ago was discussing bad choices in partners. I think I said, I'm not Bruce Lee, but I've entered a few dragons in my time and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? And I think something like that, if it's not at the expense of a victim or anything, I think that's fine, but always show the respect and stand by my reviews with all that. I think you can have a bit of fun and a bit of light, but time and a place, and it has to fit into it properly.
Timing is key, isn't it? Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's interesting. I reckon I used to try and tell. I'm not very funny, okay, as you know, Paul. But I'm not very funny. But I used to try and tell a lot of jokes early on, and I got into all these situations. So, for example, I did one case about it's a Rochdale sauna, and I still half joke about it now, but I feel more and more uncomfortable about it every time. Whereas some guy actually forced his partner to go to this sauna in Rochdale and have lots of experiences there that she didn't want to have. I mean, it's really, really awkward. But then, everyone's always saying to me about Rochdale saunas and all the rest of it. And I don't know, it's really difficult. And this was probably 5-6 years ago, this first happened. And I feel more and more uncomfortable about it every time. And I think that's how it is, though, isn't it? Because it's, especially if you're covering a murder case, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to a family. And who the hell are we to be laughing and making jokes about anything to do with that? It's outrageous, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listen to all of you, and I wouldn't say, I think, I wouldn't say that any of you were in that that category. There are some that just take it just quite far, and it's so uncomfortable to listen to.
There's one that this name names. There's one that we used to listen to, Paul. So I take the mickey out of in our little Facebook group, and it's called Boozy Bazaar and whatever it is. And they do a murder. I think it's a father and a boy and his mum, and they do a drink and they do a bizarre thing and a murder. And to me, it just blows my mind how anyone, one, can think that's a great idea, and two, how the hell would you listen to that?
Well, that's people with no passion, is it? There's no passion whatsoever. That's leeching onto the same as people putting makeup on and telling true crime. True crime is it is the genre that will never ever die. I don't think it happens every single day. Something new is happening. I'm sure as the rest of you, like myself, will have enough tales that you know of to keep you going probably till the end of your days if you wanted to. Of course you will. It will never sort of end. People jump on that. They see every documentary on Netflix, everything like that. They think, oh, right, okay, I'll do this and I'll just put my makeup on. And all they care about is the viewing figures. It doesn't have to be accurate. It has to get them up there on YouTube like that. I find that quite obscene, really. No.
But that brings us to another subject. We've discussed this, me and Paul, quite a lot. I wonder how you feel, Dawn and Naomi, about it. So, for example, I might see a case that I cover. It might be covered in the tabloids as sex-starved, transvestite murders, blah, blah, blah. And I might cover it and call it instead. I might call it, an awful tragedy. Just take that I can't get the word out, that hyperbole out of it. And Dawn, I know with you, you're very much like that, aren't you? You're not into the...
No, sensational, no.
Not at all.
No, I think I'm quite boring with my titles. It's always about the victim. It's always them. It's just plain and simple. There's no sensational. It's probably why I'm not doing really well, because I don't sensationalise anything. It's just
doing well.
You are.
I don't mean it like that. I'm just.
But you still have the passion for it, Dawn, don't you? Though
yeah,
you have the passion to do it.
Get it out there.
That's why you'll always smash it. Of course you will. You got that passion.
But it's But no, that's that's not for me at all. That's why I was on your opinion about the joking one. Joking in the episodes early on. I always think, should I, redo them with just me, because I don't want to offend anybody, and I think that's the journey in a little bit. But no, so I don't want to sensationalize or take away from the victim. So I think what you're doing is right, Adam.
And that's interesting. When we speak to Bob and Ali at Twisted Britain, they cover really old cases. And the reason they cover really old cases, one, they're both history buffs and know their stuff. But number two, they don't want to offend anyone that's living.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that too.
Yeah.
So what about you? Because you cover Naomi, you cover quite up-to-date ones sometimes. So how is that for you then? Because as opposed to the older ones?
I think it's, do you know what? When you've had because my career's been in television, which is all current and up to date, I think things that maybe might intimidate somebody new coming into this from a different kind of job, where you don't have to approach people cold and go in. And it was really nerve-wracking in the beginning, because I was approaching people, but I've either been ignored, which has happened a couple of times, which is fine. I just think, well, they're not ready. And it's usually, I'll only approach people for a couple of reasons. Number one, if there is something for them to be gained. So if I do my deep dives, for example, I'll think about who's closest to them, and if they're not a potential suspect or enabler in a missing person or a death, then I'll ask them. And I'll say, what would you like to get out of this? Next week, I have got a 4-part series coming out on a missing man. And he's been missing since July. And his mum, his people contacted me, and they said, we have been recommended your podcast to do a bit of a deep dive into it. We're getting no press. It was all ready to go a couple of weeks ago. And then the mum was really struggling with her son, who's gone missing, and so we put it on pause, and I give them full control. So I give them all of the episodes before they can make any changes. I will obviously fact check them, and they know that I've got I teach journalism as well, 1 day a week, and so I have to live by I teach ethics, so it's I have to practice what I preach, and so I just make sure that every I is dotted, every T is done. But maybe that is from having a TV background and a journalistic background. It always feels very current. And actually, like who was saying it before? I think, Paul, it was you who said, you've had members of people's families come and talk to you, and I've had that recently as well, of quite a few of my cases. One of them was sweet boy Noah Donahue, who's from Ireland, who was found in a storm drain. That is an awful case, and they're fighting so hard to try and get justice for him, because the police are framing it in a way that they don't believe panned out. So there's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes, and I was quite nervous to do it, but so many people in Ireland had written and said, please cover this case. They just don't get enough mainstream coverage. And when I did, I got just the most lovely message from the family, just saying, we don't listen to anything, but we had someone listen to it for us. And then they said, you really should listen to it. She's really talking very respectfully. And it was just what made me sad was that they'd obviously had experiences where this teenage boy and his death hadn't been told sensitively. And that was really sad. So I think there's sometimes, people are going to talk about cases, and it is the brutal reality of when you lose someone tragically, you will get put into the press, and your business becomes public knowledge. So I think if there are people like us who can do it in a ethical and moral way and put their victims at the centre, and what I always do is at every single episode I'll put a tribute to the victim, whether it's I've gone on their Facebook page and I've seen that they like sailing and they had a lovely smile and they loved their kids, or they were really thoughtful of their mum. I'll always make sure that there's something to put in there, so that lasting feeling is not the way they were taken, but actually the way they lived.
I do a similar thing now. I dedicate every episode of mine to a victim remembering as well. Just jumping on what you said there. Sorry I don't want to monopolise anything, but the example of someone getting in touch and sort of a bit of a knee-jerk reaction, really. The case I did a couple of years ago, it's one a bit local to me, where a father had killed himself and his 3 sons, and he'd called up the boy's mother and made his eldest son say goodbye to him as he gassed them all in a 4x4 with a lawnmower put on. And quite local to me, there is, on the spot where they died, there's a bench dedicated to him and all that. I covered this tale. A member of the wife's family got in touch with me as soon as it was posted up. I can't believe that you've posted this. I've just seen his mugshot come up on Instagram, and it must have been like it was that quickly after the episode was published. They couldn't have had time to listen to it. So I got back on and I said, look, not trying to stir up anything. Please just listen to the account and then come back to me. And to be fair, within about an hour later, they did say, I'm so sorry, I've listened to that. That's very respectful. It was just a bit of a shock seeing his face up there like that. So it's unbelievably raw for some people, isn't it? And you have a bit of a responsibility if you cover stuff like this. If you cover it and put it out, you might as well be. We're not kind of guided by any guidelines or anything, but you should be morally, really. You really should, yeah.
I take your point, but most of the people that contact me are very nice and say you've covered it well. But I've had the opposite as well. I've had people saying you take this down straight away. It's about my family members. The only one I did is, I mean, you're a journalist, Naomi, but back in the day I was quite naive, and I had a guy, and most of it wasn't fact checked. It was just somebody told me all this stuff, and I said to him again and again, like, "Are you sure the rest of the family are okay with this?" He said, "Yeah, it's absolutely fine. I've chased them all." And of course, when it went out, I had 4 or 5 family members saying, "This is a load of nonsense. Take it down now. None of this is true." So I just took it down straight away. Yeah. And I learned a huge lesson that day.
Yeah. It's part of the process, isn't it? We're all human. We're going to make mistakes now. And yeah.
I've had an episode, a family member asked for an episode to be taken down as well. And that's kind of why I've started to gravitate more to the older ones, because yes, they said it was just so raw. It wasn't personal. They just didn't want him, the family member mentioned at all. So they asked for the episode to be taken down. Everything, social media, everything. They just didn't want to see his face, his name, anything. So that was quite, you shouldn't. Initially, I kind of took it personally because I didn't want them to think that I had done something disrespectful. It was a lovely, like you say, it was a tribute. It was, I thought I'd done a really good job, but it wasn't about me. It was about respecting the family members. So I did that. But yeah, it's
a fine line, isn't it? But you have to do I had a case once back early days for me, and I'm not sure. I suspect it was the murderer. It was an unsolved case. And this person contacted me. He said in the US, reckon he knew this case when he was in the UK. And he told me load of information. He was desperate, and he kept emailing me 4 or 5 times a day. And then as soon as I covered it, his account just disappeared. I just wonder if he was the person. You're never going to know, are you?
No.
I just wonder.
No. That's weird. No.
Anyway, Paul, what are you going to bring to us today?
Well, I was just going to actually leach into some of the questions that we've had here. Question from Ben that we've got on the comments is, for all us presenters, how often do you get contacted about episodes? Is it regularly? It's not too regularly for myself, I must admit. When I do, they always go on I say I've got a famous list on my fridge that I add stuff to. It's long gone from the fridge, but I do have a working list of stuff. It's about as long as my arm, but it's not as much as it was a couple of years ago. I mean, what about yourselves?
I've just got caught up with all my listener requests. Usually I get them when we go to events and people put in requests that way. I've had a couple of emails, but I had a list as long as my arm, and I thought I'm never going to get through all these requests. But I've caught up now, so yeah, I think I've maybe got a couple to go now, and so no, it's kind of tailed off like you, Paul. It's not as much now. It's manageable.
What about you, Naomi? Do you get many? You must get loads of people contact you, right?
It's probably. I mean, today, Wednesdays, because that's the day I release episodes. So I'll usually get, people will usually listen, and it will remind them of another case, and then they'll message. So today I've had about 5, and actually 2 of them were the same, which I found really interesting, and both were very similar to the case that I covered in the episode I released today. So I sort of feel like sometimes it's a bit of a ricochet effect, and it depends. I also think as well, you know, I will often say, you know, if there is a case that you'd like me to look into, do let me know. So I think maybe extending that invitation sometimes has meant that there is quite a lot. I mean, yeah, probably sort of 5 to 10 a week. And it's funny how so many of them are the same ones. And it's usually ones where nobody knows. I never ever get like, you know, can you do Madeleine McCann? You know, I mean, I've got a no kids kind of, well, young kids policy at the moment. It just does my head in too much. But it's really, some of those cases are ones that I'd never ever heard of. And then you look into it, and actually the case is absolutely extraordinary. One of those was Charlene Downs from Blackpool, and I did a 10-part series on that. And I realised it was because the case has been severely misrepresented in a lot of tabloids. And when you go deeper, and actually I was approached to do this one, and a member of the far right got in touch, and that's not my bag. So I was like, no. And then they said, well, we've got a whole list of documents that we want to send you. And I thought, I don't know if I want this. And then someone else that I did trust said, these documents are legit, and they leaked all these documents. So I sort of had access to this case. And what I thought from reading, you know, you read the Sun or, you know, whatever, and you look at the headlines, and it was all about, you know, Charlene Downs chopped up into kebabs, horrible stuff. It was a teenage girl, you know, and then you get to the real crux of the story and like, wow, okay, that is very different. The evidence is very, very different. And now other people have picked up on it. Channel 5 have done a doc on it now, and people have been exposed for doing things they shouldn't have done. And unfortunately, she's still missing. But it's quite nice, I think, for us, where we can take cases that are underrepresented, are getting no attention, when actually, you know, the families are, they want to be heard, they want to be listened to, and we can reframe it, and we can do it. And look, I'm not holier than thou, my goodness, no. And there are people who are, God, there are some amazing podcasters out there and YouTubers who I'm just in awe of, and I try and listen to them and try and not copy their style, but I sort of take words that they use, and I think that was really respectful. That really stood out. So I think it's funny that the requests, it would be funny if we all actually looked at the requests that we all got. I wonder if how many of those would cross-reference with each other and see if there are ones that are more requested than others, and why would be a really good thing to know.
That's always my first question. I get quite a few as well. And my first question always is, thank you ever so much, really appreciate it. Tell me, what's your interest in this case?
Yeah, great.
You get some quite interesting responses to that.
What do you normally get, Adam, off the back of that? What people say?
It just varies. Often people just live in the local area and they say, it's a really interesting case, I don't know what happened. But often as well, I get people that have been, there's one guy I can think of recently, and I keep meaning to do a, Naomi, I'd love you to 10-parter on it. He was taken to court and he was accused of the murder, and he was found innocent. And he said, I want to take you to the place. I want to show you. I want to tell you what really happened. And these things, like all of us three here, we've all got real jobs as well, real lives.
Yeah.
If I was a full-time podcaster, I'd have been on the train tomorrow to go and see him, and done that with my camera person. And done the episode, because there's so many fantastic stories to tell. And some of the stories that I cover as well, I cover a lot of people on the edge of society. Last week I covered a case. It was a guy, he was a site foreman, but he's also dealing drugs. And then he got ambushed by a group of people and his body's never been found. And so some people don't have any sympathy for him, but actually I do, because it's not his family who are now left that these guys had the issue with. It was with him. At least now, please just tell them where the body is, right? It's been like 15 years. Just say what happened. It's gone, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, it's so sad.
It is, but it's also sad, isn't it? Paul, come on. What do you want to talk about with us this evening?
Wow. Well, I was torn between two, but what I will want to discuss is the 3,000 prisoners who've been released in the past, say, 2 months to try and free up some of the overcrowding in UK jails. Now, some of these people have been picked up in Lamborghinis. They've been shouting, "Hail Starmer," as soon as they're released. Some of them will openly admit that they'll be straight back in because they're being released to be homeless. You know, at least one person was arrested on the day he was released for sexual offences. Other people, the day they're released, have been pictured on Instagram posing with people brandishing knives. Keir Starmer apparently says he shares the public's anger. And is this not an absolutely bollocks strategy? But what do you do instead? I can see why it has, because prisons are at bursting point, aren't they? They're operating, apparently, like some stats I read, about 99% full. They have less than 2,000 places in the UK for prisons. And then they just had that rash of people imprisoned after the Southport. Yeah. I don't want to say riots, protests, disturbances. It was bordering on riots, wasn't it? Would you class it as riots? What happened across the country after Southport?
Yeah. In some places,
yeah.
And people were very violent. Yeah.
Unrest, disturbance. It's got a few people sentences in the nick, hasn't it? But so what I kind of want to get your thoughts on is, well, what are your thoughts on that? Are these seem to be strategic jailings rather than, you know, there was a Tory councillor's wife who's just gone down for 31 months for posting horrendous things on Twitter, but it's a Twitter post. Conversely, last year, a fella in my locality committed a sexual assault, was done for breaching a restraining order, sending horrendous messages to his ex, and he got 24 months. Now, how is that right? And what are your thoughts?
Oh, this is a great question. Dawn, what do you think?
I think that I see what, for example, for the rioters, while they had to get large sentences, that's proving a point. But the fact that they're letting so many people out of prison that shouldn't be getting let out now to accommodate these ones, there needs to be another solution. I mean, they give back to the community that they're destroyed. Do something other than just putting them in prison and letting people out like shouldn't be let out. There's got to be another way. And then they also, I read after that, we heard that other prisons are almost full, but then we heard after that, oh no, the prisons are doing fine. We heard from somebody up high that, oh no, they're absolutely fine. I was like, just be a wee bit more transparent. Let's work together. There's got to be, hiding things is not working. But the sentences are just, there doesn't seem to be any consistency, is there? Needs to be under one. Needs to be more of that, I think. That's my opinion.
And the probation service is even more overstretched than the prison service. So File on 4 did a podcast on probation and how it's just there are failings all over the place. I mean, there's so many cases that I've covered where a killer has been released and then probation haven't. I'm trying to think. Janet Scott was a case. So she was God, I'm just trying to think of the man's name. He'd killed Pearl Black, his ex-partner, next to where her 2 children were sleeping in a fit of rage. He was put into prison for 14 years. He got let out 2 years early. And then he went on to stalk 3 different women whilst he was out. And then he got into a relationship with a mum of 6, and he stabbed her after stalking her for months. And then she managed to fling herself out of the car that he'd bundled her into. She'd thrown herself out seeing a parking warden. He was actually driving her from her house to his house to do goodness knows whatever. She was bleeding very heavily from her stomach. And when the parking warden was helping her, he rammed the car into them both, and she died, and the parking warden had life-changing injuries, and he was put back in. And not only had Janet reported him to the probation officer for stalking offences, just a few months before that, Janet's daughter had been so concerned that she'd gone to the probation officer and had a face-to-face meeting and said, is my mum at risk? Because he'd done things like he was moving things about in their kitchen for where he'd moved the plates from one cupboard to another because he liked it, even though they were a family of 6 and that was their norm, 7, that was their normal. And the probationer said, yeah, I think so. I think he's all right. I think he's all right now. And then he did that. And then, it went to court, and he wasn't suspended or anything like that. But it really highlighted how the probation service, he said, look, I was so overworked, and not that it's an excuse, but just to quote him, I was so overtired with all of these people that I'm trying to keep an eye on, and I couldn't do it. And so I think that the prison stuff is really bad, but then we also have to look at the probation service and how we can't then blame them if they've been given massive quotas. Or actually, I think I read that in 20... Oh God, it was about 10 years ago, there were 22,000 probation employees, not all of them officers, but support staff as well. And now there's like a third of that. So it's crazy.
Yeah. It's no surprise. Sorry, Paul.
No, I was just going to say, I have 2 good friends who are social workers and who cover like sort of around the area where I live. And they've said to me before now, they could spend their full week's hours of work just in the office catching up on paperwork from the week before. That's without going out for visits and whatever comes in the meantime. So they are massively overstretched, and you're always going to get people who slip through the cracks with that, aren't you? You need to tighten that up properly wherever it takes.
Yeah.
Do you know what really concerns me is over the next few days, all the right-wing papers will be saying this. Keir Starmer's Labour releasing people, and if it was the Tories in power, it would be the left-wing press saying Tories releasing. But the real question we're answering is one: the recall to prisons, as I understand it, is about 50% of people that get released, and it's because it's not the Lamborghinis, Paul, that you were talking about. Your average experience, somebody leaving prison, I mean, they're thinking, is my partner still going to see me? Where's my bank account? Where am I going to sleep tonight? These are the things.
What do you go out to?
Yeah, this is the reality. I mean, what are they going out to? And it plays into Naomi's point about the probation service.
Yeah,
we've got to look after these people. And so my issue with prisons, okay, I think that we send so many people to prison, it's crazy. And in the riots, and I think there were riots, and I get it. The guy that I think it was in Southport. He's a 58-year-old. He punched a policeman, right? He went to prison for 3 years. 2 right, I'd have doubled it. And I think about some of the other people outside mosques or outside hostels with immigrants that are really causing issues. Absolutely. Throw away the key as far as I'm concerned. I don't care the less. But what concerned me, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, what concerned me is I saw there was some idiot, some 20-year-old girl. She threw a shopping trolley at the police and then collapsed. She was on her face, collapsed on her head. She got 20 months. I see other guys who got 36 months. And the case this week, I think, for inciting, 31 months for her. to me, I think it's ridiculous. And I think that as long as we keep throwing all these people in jail that shouldn't be in jail, I'd give her not 31 months, I'd give her 91 months working 8 to 6 in the community, picking up litter, doing anything else. I don't care what she's doing.
Yeah.
Stop sending them to prison. In prison, we need to rehabilitate our people, right?
Yeah. That's what annoyed me as well. No, sorry.
No, carry on. No, you go on.
No, it was just saying that was what annoys me. And after the riots, whatever you want to call them, it was the community that was down tidying up and picking up the mess and sorting everything out. It should have been them. They should have been. These people should have been made to come and give back to the community. That's how I feel. The same as you, Adam. Not putting them in prison is just an easy ride for. It's just a laugh, isn't it? As far as I can see, it's just a badge of honour, and then they're back out and they got away with it. So that's.
I've seen people who smashed up, say, let's say Southport. Everyone who was in prison from Southport who was involved in riots there, rather than imprisoning them, give them the community order, as you say, for say 31 months, right? You will spend 31 months every single day, right, repairing not only what you've destroyed, but cleaning up the area where you live. Get that graffiti off, get that chewing gum scraped up there. Don't you like it? Fuck shit. Shouldn't have fucking done that then, should you?
That's like a proper punishment, I think, rather than just...
Yes, completely. Name and shame them as well. Or, like, say, for example, the Tory councillor's wife, who we were just discussing then, right? So, a better punishment for her is, right, say, let's have a massive fine for them straight away. Let's say, look at the income of the house. So, right, £50,000 fine there. What? Well, your Tory councillor, you're obviously... You're not that on the bones of your arse, not living off the bins from Poundland, are you? So we'll have that fine there, right? You're working and you have to, like, once a week or something, go and explain to people who are genuinely in need of help why you said what you said. Yeah. Proper punishment like that. And then when them 91 months are up, that is a long kind of time, that actually, but 31 months, when that time is up, that person will have learned their lesson, won't they? They will never want to repeat that. Humility, destroy a person to their bare shell for doing what they've done.
But prison is where people that are going to hurt you, me, and our families should be rehabilitated. But how can they be rehabilitated when the staffing is so short because there's so many people? And then it's like the solution from a lot of people is build more prisons. I'm like, seriously?
Build and they will come. Build of dreams. Build it and they will come. And that, it's really tough, isn't it? It's so tough.
What about you, Paul? What's your overall view on it all then?
Well, what about things like say we get into human rights and all that shit now, but what about things like stocks or public flogging like they used to have years ago? So, like on a Saturday, you get your scumbags from the magistrate's court who committed heinous crimes, right? So you're clearly guilty of them all. Put them in a stock. You can't throw anything but fruit. Regulate it all. Sell tickets for it. All the money goes towards building, I don't know, bigger prison, or I tell you what a brilliant thing it would go to, keeping my mum's heating on over the winter. That'd be pretty good. Yeah. It just needs. I think it needs to be more in the community, and I think if the community is seeing someone punished every week on a Saturday, they'll say, "Oh, look at them wrong-uns like that." They feel better because they see someone being punished. Go to prison, people think now. I was talking to my mum about this yesterday, and she said, "Oh, people go to prison. It's like a holiday for them." Some people deliberately go there just to get off the feet, don't they? They can get spice, they've got telly, bloody 3 squares, warmth, got a lot more than a hell of a lot of people have who haven't committed crimes. So, yeah.
There was I can't remember what newspaper it was. I think it might have been the Telegraph or something. They were outside some of the prisons when the first lot of prisoners were released early in September. And I can clearly remember this video of a guy, and he was like, I'll be back. They're not even going to give my bed to anyone. He goes, because I've got nowhere else to go. So now, and he said they're stupid, and he actually was saying they're so stupid. I told him not to release me, but now I'm going to have to go and do something, and to put myself back here because I need to be warm, and I've got no family left. And it was, and he was in. I looked at what he was in for, and it was burglary and offences like that, non-violent crimes, and it was just a real sad state of affairs, actually, isn't it?
And it is. We're crime podcasters, aren't we? We see this sort of crime all the time of people who are desperate.
What was shocking with me is that so out of those 3,000 that have been released, right, 1% of them, 37 people, have been wrongly released.
Yeah, for
and 5 of them still haven't been recalled. So that's a disaster straight away, isn't it?
Yeah,
and they've done it again on Tuesday, released another 1,000 plus. So it just doesn't work. But then I'd say with a habitual burglar, like I've been burgled, I don't know if any of the rest of you have, but I have many years ago, and it's a horrible thing to go through. But I wouldn't if somebody burgled me, I wouldn't be too happy at home seeing my burglar being released early for no reason apart from political strategy. I think that's disgraceful.
Yeah,
really.
It is.
Let me go on to my topic really quickly. So, all these podcasts, true crime podcasts, are true crime and drinking. What's all that about? Naomi, you got a glass of Prosecco there. What's all that about?
Okay, disclaimer, guys. This is the one night I'm not working this week.
Yeah. I saw Naomi at lunchtime. She'd have bought a Prosecco.
My night's off, so bollocks.
And it's ironic because the Scottish lady's on the water.
I'm on the water.
Yeah.
I'll let the side down.
That's neat vodka, that Dawn, isn't it? Come on.
So come on, Naomi. Why is it all true crime and gin or whatever it's called? What's all that about?
I don't know. I've seen it. I've seen a few of those. Is it wine, true crime? I can't remember. I mean, maybe when you're listening to it to cope, oh God, I'm such a bore, aren't I? I would get a fact wrong, or I'd say something wrong, or I already get absolutely slated for my accent anyway. Everyone says I'm like Dawn. Well, not everyone. One person wrote me a 4-star review the other day. I keep bringing this up. I'm clearly scarred.
4-star? You're bragging, Naomi. We only get 2 stars on this podcast.
No, but they Dr. Star because they said that I sound like Dawn Sutcliffe from Gavin and Stacey. Now, Julia Davis, who plays her, is from the West Country, and she's putting that accent on. So I'm not even getting compared to a real Essex girl. I'm getting compared to a fictional one, and I'm being Dr. Star for it. I can't help it.
Aren't people highly strung? Right?
So now, just to...
Cool.
The most unbelievable thing that anyone ever got in touch with me is I mentioned on a tale many years ago. I was talking about hitmen, and I said, it's normally something that you associate in films in the UK, like Pulp Fiction or something like that. And I said The Mechanic, but I said I'm talking about the original Mechanic with Charles Bronson, not the remake with Jason Statham, because it's shockingly shit, right? And that was it.
You can't say that, Paul. You know that.
Can't say that about the steak, right? But so thinking nothing of it. A few days later, someone got in touch with me and said, loved your show. Show's brilliant, but I'm gonna have to stop listening to you now because Jason Statham is my favourite actor, and I can't believe you said that about seriously. And I was like, how highly strung are you, my love? I tell you what, you'll miss me before I miss you. Jesus.
What about you, Dawn? Have you got any shocking reviews like we all have or not?
Sorry, we've totally gone off your
I know, but it's great.
I know, sorry. I haven't had really bad reviews. They've been all right. They've been okay.
Oh, Dawn, that's so good. I've had 2 brilliant ones in my life. One was I'd rather listen to 2 cats fighting outside, which I loved. And the second one recently, which my wife still keeps quoting to me all the time. So Adam's okay, but he's in decline. I love that.
That's a good one.
Very much fun. I've very much thought that for a long time. Since me, you, and Mike have been doing live shows, I've really was me. That was who sent that review, by the way.
What about you, Paul? You must have some shockers.
That
sounds
yeah,
wrong.
couple of them. Do you know what I mean? People will get on. I think like, but again, it might come from my bit of humour, and some of them be naughty. One that sticks in my mind all the time is that I say something when I'm promoting Patreon on the show. I say it's as easy to sign up to. It's so simple to do that Diane Abbott can understand it. Right now, Diane Abbott, right, for me is famously thick as fuck. I mean, fucking, hello, McFly, right? So I had a review after that saying, great show, black woman shaming. Oh my God, can't believe. And I was like, well, you're the only person who's brought her skin colour into it. I've not mentioned that whatsoever. I've related to her because she's fucking dense. That's why. And so stuff like that sticks in my mind, yeah. But I find people can be really fickle, and if you mispronounce one word or a place name or something like that, if you're not from there, my God, they will. I think why would you spend the time to leave a review and not give constructive criticism just to be nasty? It's just spite, really. I don't understand some people. I certainly wouldn't do it to anyone.
You can just press stop.
Yes, that's it. Just don't listen.
Right? Yes. This is the thing, isn't it?
There was a really good one I had the other day. I did a collab with Stuart Blues from British Murders.
Wait, who? I've never heard of him. Have you, Paul? Never heard of him.
Never whatsoever. No. He needs to up his profile a bit, probably make himself a bit more.
And we did a collab when he broke his collarbone and he couldn't be asked to research anything. So can you come on and do one instead?
He couldn't be asked to research. No,
I think he had quite a lot of painkillers in his system, and he was a bit tired. So I came on and did one, and then someone left a review on his website, which was weird anyway, and said, I used to love your show, but now you've done a episode with Peter Andre's best mate and lost all credibility. Can I just say that I produced one series of Peter Andre's show 12 years ago. He doesn't even follow me on Instagram. He's a lovely man, but I'm not his best friend. But I think what they've done is they've just, I don't know if maybe they had a problem with him and they just wanted to have a dig. So they've Googled my name. It's come up on IMDb or some crap. And they've thought, oh, that's a good one. It's like, what?
Naomi, I've got to ask you. So, but you work with loads. I mean, Keith Lemon, I've seen you posing with, if that's the right word, in the past. But these guys, I mean, our audiences are tiny compared to theirs. I mean, how do these guys cope with it? Seriously, the negative feedback they get. How do they manage it?
It's really. Do you know what? It's really. Some of them are targeted a lot more than others. I think with Lee Francis, he's quite loved, and I think but also he's got a really refreshing attitude. Like, he just doesn't care. He's all about his family, and every weekend, instead of going to a celeb party, he was like, oh, I'll just watch the Goonies, and that's his favorite film. And he'll watch all the, and he'll make stuff, and he's got a man cave. It's insane. He's got this amazing man cave where he makes things. So he kind of switches off. But someone that I am very close friends with, because she gave me my first job in TV for no other reason, is Trisha Goddard, who's she's an icon, the chat show host Trisha, and she gets so much racism. She gets so much hate. People calling her desperate. This woman, she's so kind. She's done so much for mental health services through her career. Yes, she had the Trisha show, and I did work on the Trisha show. I worked on it when it was on Channel 5, and we were quite strict with what we could put out. So it was very different to Jeremy Kyle and those kind of things. But I've seen some of the comments she gets, and, she lives with cancer. And I remember that she sent me some things recently that had really triggered her. She'd gone on the Daily Fail or wherever and looked at the comments underneath her, and they'd announced that she was covering Good Morning Britain or something through the summer, and she was like, oh God, they're out already. And I got so upset, just being her her friend and someone that she's helped me and so many people in TV. She gave us a chance. I didn't have any TV experience. I was a fitness instructor and at 19, and I desperately wanted to get out and I wanted to work in TV. And I went and sat in the audience of the Trisha show, and I asked her for a job and she gave me one. It was that's my whole foray. Wow. All my career, I tell my students that I worked really hard, but actually I did when I was in it. But it was actually pure luck. But she gave me a chance, and she gave lots of other people a chance, people that, didn't really have the money to go to university like me. And, and she trained us up. And then to see such horrible trolls, these are people with no faces, they're not brave enough to put their faces to these comments. They've got these stupid usernames, and it's just sickening. And actually they're the same people that comment on true crime stories as well, and we'll say really horrible and inappropriate things about the victim or make jokes on there. So I guess it's all part of the same breed, but I know that it definitely affects some people more than others, for sure. It's horrible, isn't it? It's a horrible world we've kind of let ourselves.
It is, but I think as creators, we have to accept that we are going to get bad reviews. And when I see some creators that post the reviews and make comments about it, I think that's just poor, isn't it? You've got to just accept it. It happens. Move on.
I'd never certainly, like myself, share a TikTok or an Instagram video or anything of myself posing behind a bad review that I'd had. I think, oh my God, that's obviously needled you so badly.
Yeah.
That you need to, just deal with it. Grow up. Put your ego second to what you do.
I agree entirely. Just in case people here listening or watching are thinking about starting their own podcast, we've got an expert here in Dawn and her husband. Dawn, tell us about what you're doing at the moment.
We've just started a small business called Clurin and it means thistle wave. Thistle wave was taken, so I had to come up be a bit, ingenious and think of something different. And it's just to help podcasters, anybody that wants to find out about podcasting, wants to get into podcasting, whether you're independent or a business or anything. Just if you're interested in podcasting, don't know what a podcast is even, of course you're listening, you must do, but just I want to be that person who I would have wanted when I first started podcasting, because I didn't have a clue, didn't know what equipment or anything, and I just want to be that person for somebody. So that's all it is, just to help bring people together so you're not alone and help you.
And how can they find you, Dawn?
It will be it's cluranton.com, and it's CLUARANTONN.com. You can get us anywhere.
And just before we finish, Naomi, any last thoughts? Any last things you want to share with our audience here?
No, but just thank you. And actually just wanted to also counteract all the when we do get negativity, what's actually great is that is a very small part, I think, of what most creators do get. And actually we have some really treasured relationships with some of my listeners. They're so supportive, and I also like to support them. I've had a few of our babies recently, and they've sent me the photos, and it's so lovely. Or they've said, "Oh, yeah, I'm on my holiday and listening to you," and I was like, "Oh, that's great." It's really lovely. It is a really lovely place. Don't want it to all be negative. It's a positive place too.
It is
absolutely. Paul, any final thoughts from you this evening?
I'd just like to again look into the comments, and one of them is, what are our thoughts about Victoria Taylor, a woman who's gone missing on 30th of September? I believe she's sadly been found deceased in the river. So I believe, and I don't want to fuel the flames of another Nicola Bulley story here. I think it's a very, very tragic story. I have thought myself for a couple of weeks that it's not going to be a happy outcome for it, but I don't think there's any kind of drama there. I don't know what yourself think, or
no, I don't know enough about the case, but I did see the headline that a body had been found. It's so sad.
Yeah. And I watched the documentary on Nicola Bulley recently. I watched her partner. I mean, he was so strong doing that, and the family. It was fantastic, and it just annoys me that we've got some people out there in the media, I won't mention any particular names, but it's all about them and not about the victims. It's back to what we've been saying throughout this podcast, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just lose your ego. Think about the people that are suffering their worst ever times. Just stop it. Okay? Just stop it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Some people will inject themselves into these things, won't they? And then, they might even fly to different countries to get involved with things. Who knows?
Well, like Spain, for example, Tenerife.
Yeah, or maybe Tenerife. You know what I mean? But they still get outed as the twats that they are, don't they? So they
do.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, good stuff. Look, it's been a fantastic hour. I can't believe we're an hour and 5 minutes. We're going over. So, again, a huge thank you, Dawn and Naomi. It's been great having you here. And
thanks for inviting us, Adam.
You're more than welcome. Please come and join us again. I mean, I get so bored of Paul, as you can imagine, after this evening. So, at least we got rid of Mike.
Gets fed up of his toys very quickly. It'll be Mike next time. And, yeah, we'd love to have you on again, guys, if you want to come on.
Yeah,
anytime.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's been very refreshing.
It really has. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening to come and watch us live. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Cheerio for now.
Bye.
See you all. Good night.
Bye.